The following reading contains graphic depictions of violence and is not suitable for young children. Death Note, Another Note, The Los Angeles BB Murder Cases. Original concept by Sugumi Opa and Takashi Obata. By Nisoi Sin, translated by Andrew Cunningham. The third proved problematic. Until the case reached its end, I was reduced to nothing but an absent gaze. Think of it this way. I was a pair of abstract eyes walking around wearing my flesh as a disguise. Living as such, there is no point in expending any form of societal responsibility or human reaction. Kiyoshi Kasai, Bye Bye Angel. Part 1. How to use it. When Beyond Birthday committed his third murder, he attempted an experiment, namely, to see if it were possible for a human being to die of internal hemorrhaging without rupturing any organs. Specifically, he drugged his victim so they fell unconscious, tied them up, and proceeded to beat their left arm thoroughly, being careful not to break the skin. He was hoping to bring about enough hemorrhaging to cause death from loss of blood, but this attempt ended, sadly, in failure. Blood congested in the arm, and it turned purplish red beneath the skin, but the victim did not die. They simply shook, convulsed, and remained alive. He had been convinced the blood loss incurred by this wound would be enough to kill someone, but apparently he had underestimated the matter. As far as Beyond Birthday was concerned, the actual method of murder rated fairly low on the amusement scale, and it was never more than an interesting experiment. It did not particularly matter to him whether it succeeded or not. Beyond Birthday simply shrugged and took out a knife. No. Not this style. Not this narrative voice. I'll never manage to keep up this arch tone all the way through. The harder I try, the more bored I'll get, and the lazier the writing will be. To put it in terms, Holden Caulfield, one of history's most famous literary might use, detailing what Beyond Birthday did and thought does not suit my purposes, even if in my position I have a great deal of sympathy for him. Explaining the entirety of his murders in carefully phrased sentences does not in any way increase the value of these notes. This is not a report, nor is it a novel, even if it happens to turn into one of those. I will not be happy. I hate to use such a hackneyed line, but I imagine that by the time anyone lays eyes on these words, I will no longer be alive. I hardly need to remind the reader about the epic battle between the century's greatest detective, L, and that grotesque murderer, Kira. The instrument of death was a little bit more fantastic than a guillotine, for example, but all Kira accomplished was another reign of terror and a pathetically infantile way of thinking. Looking back, I can only surmise that the gods of victory smiled on Kira for their own vain amusement. Perhaps these gods actually wanted a blood-soaked world of betrayal and false accusation. Perhaps the entire episode exists as a lesson to teach us the difference between the Almighty and the Shinigami. Who knows? I, for one, have no intention of wasting any more time thinking about this most negative series of events. 2. With Kira. What matters to me is L, the century's greatest detective. In light of his staggering mental abilities, L died an unjust and untimely death. In the public record alone, he solved over 3,500 difficult crimes and sent 3 times that number of degenerates to prison. He wielded incredible power, was able to mobilize every investigative bureau in the entire world, and was applauded generously for his efforts. And during it all, he never showed his face. I want to record his words as accurately as possible, and I want to leave them for someone to find. As someone who was given the chance to follow in his footsteps, well, I may not have been able to succeed him, but I want to leave this behind. So what you're reading now are my notes about L. It's a dying message, not from me, and not directed at the world. The person who will most likely read this first will probably be that big-headed twit Near. But if that's the case, I will not tell him to shred or burn these pages. If it causes him pain to discover that I knew things about L that he did not, then that's fine. There's also a chance that Kira might read this, and I hope he does. If these notes tell the murderer, who only got by with the help of a supernatural killing notebook and an idiot of a Shinigami, that he was, under any other circumstances, not even worth the dirt beneath L's shoes, then they have served their purpose. I am one of the few people who ever met L as L. When and how I met him, that is the single most valuable memory I have, and I will not write it here. But on that occasion, L related to me 3 stories of his exploits, and the episode involving Beyond Birthday was one of these. If I drop the pretense and simply refer to it as the Los Angeles BB murder cases, then I imagine many of you will have heard of them. Obviously, it never came to light that L, and more importantly, Whammy's house, which raised me until I was 15, was deeply connected to the matter. But in fact, they were. L, on principle, never got involved in a case unless there were more than 10 victims, or $1 million at stake. And this is the real reason why he belatedly, but aggressively, involved himself in this little case, which only ever had 3 or 4 victims. I will explain further in the pages that follow, but for this reason, the case of the Los Angeles BB murders are a watershed event for L, for me, and even for Kira. It was a monumental event for all of us. Why? Because this case is where L first introduced himself as Ryuzaki. Let us skip past all tedious descriptions of what Beyond Birthday thought, of how he went about killing his 3rd victim, since I have no interest in that at all. And while we're at it, let's skip the 2nd and 1st victims, make no effort to look back at the earlier murders, and adjust the clock's hands to the morning of the day after, the glittering moment when the century's greatest detective L first began to investigate the case. Oh, I almost forgot. In the event that anyone, besides big-headed Near or the deluded murderer, is reading these notes, then I should at least perform the basic courtesy of introducing myself. Here, at the end of the prologue, I am your narrator, your navigator, your storyteller. For anyone else but those 2, my identity may be of no interest, but I am the old world's runner-up, the best dresser that died like a dog, Michael Kiel. I once called myself Mellow, and was addressed by that name, but that was a long time ago. Good memories and nightmares. Page 1. The Message. While it is now referred to as the Los Angeles BB murder cases, a rather catchy title, when it was actually happening right in the middle of the whirlpool, it was never called anything so impressive. The media called it the Wara Ningyo murders, or the LA serial locked room killings, or all kinds of other ghastly names. The fact was undoubtedly a source of great annoyance to Beyond Birthday, the perpetrator of the murders in question, but frankly, I think those names provide a more accurate description of what was actually happening. Either way, the day after Beyond Birthday carried out the 3rd of the murders, August 14th, 2002, 8:15 a.m. local time, FBI agent Naomi Misura was lying dazedly on the bed in her apartment, having just woken up. She was wearing dark leather pants and a matching leather jacket, but it would be a mistake to assume she customarily slept in this outfit. She had spent several hours racing around on her motorcycle the night before in a vain effort to burn off stress, and when she finally returned to her apartment, she had fallen instantly into a sound slumber without bothering to shower or undress. Much like the name of the case, Misura has now entered the public consciousness as the one who eventually cracked the Los Angeles BB murder cases. But the truth is that when these events were unfolding in real time, she had been suspended from her duties as an FBI agent. According to the official record, she was just on leave of absence, but this is purely because she had absolutely no ability whatsoever to stand up to the pressure from her superiors and colleagues. Suspension, leave, summer vacation. I don't think we need to go into the reason for her suspension here. What is certain is that this was America. She was Japanese, female, very good at her job, and the FBI is a large organization, which ought to be enough information. Obviously, she did have colleagues who had a high opinion of her, which is exactly why she had been able to work in the organization so far. But a month before, just before the Los Angeles BB murders, Misura had made a major blunder, so major even she could not believe it, which led directly to her current situation. This was not the kind of problem that could be alleviated by racing around in the middle of the night on a motorcycle. Misura was seriously considering quitting the FBI, casting off her entire life, and moving back to Japan. Obviously, part of her was sick and tired of all the nonsense that came with her job, But even more than that was the guilt she felt over her own mistake, which hung upon her shoulders like a dead weight. Even if there had been no pressure from those around her, not that this hypothetical was even remotely possible, Misura would have asked for time off herself, or even resigned. Misura slowly peeled herself off the bed, intending to shower away the sweat of the night before, but then she noticed the laptop on her desk was, for some reason, turned on. She had no recollection of turning it on. After all, she had just woken up. Had she hit the switch on her way in last night, and then fallen asleep without shutting it down again? She didn't remember doing that, but since the screensaver was working, there seemed to be no other explanation. One would assume that if she had enough energy left to turn on her computer, she would have had enough energy to undress. Misura peeled off her jacket and pants, and with her body feeling much lighter, got off the bed, moved over to her desk, and jiggled the mouse. This was enough to clear the screensaver, but at this point Misura became even more confused. The main email program was running and flashing a new mail message. It was possible she'd fallen asleep with her computer on, but to fall asleep in the middle of checking her email? While she was still wondering about that, she clicked on her inbox. There was one new message from Ray Pember. This was the name of Misura's current boyfriend, also an FBI agent. He was the most obvious example of the agents who had a high opinion of her, not that this stopped him from begging her to transfer to a less dangerous department every time something happened. Since her leave was almost over, this might well be just business, so Misura went ahead and opened the message. Naomi Misura-sama, I apologize for contacting you like this. I would like to request your help in solving a certain case. If you are willing to assist me, please access the third block of the third section of the Funny Dish server on August 14th at 9 a.m. The line will open for exactly 5 minutes. Please break through the firewall yourself. L. P.S. In order to contact you, I took the liberty of borrowing your friend's address. This was the simplest and safest way to contact you, so please forgive me. Regardless of whether you agree to help me or not, I need you to destroy this computer within 24 hours of reading this message.